Basketball season is back for Boston College. Will Earl Grant's program bring hype or more misery for Eagles fans? All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Today is our big basketball preview. We're going to get in and dive into the men's basketball team and what we should expect. But before we get into that, I should say there are two basketball games on campus today. The women's team opened their season against Harvard. Joanna McNamee's program looking to get themselves back to the level they were pre-pandemic, where they were about to get into the tournament, but were actually shut out because of COVID. And then last year, they were kind of just off, but they're going to be led by Taylor Soule, Marnell Garrod, and Cameron Schwartz, who should give them a good trio of talent that should hopefully get them back into a good position in the ACC. So good luck to the women's basketball team. We'll talk more about them later, but we got to talk about the men's because they're opening today too. So Earl Grant, first-year head coach, coming to Boston College from College of Charlestown. You know, there's not a lot of buzz about this program. I mean, right now, if you talk to Boston College fans, most people are just not really all that interested because BC basketball has been to the point where it's been irrelevant for 13 years now, 12 years, where they've had like maybe one or two successful seasons and then just really underperforming here and not underperforming, just performing poorly because they haven't been able to build a roster that has enough depth to challenge in the ACC. Unfortunately, I look at this year's team, the 2021-2022 season, and I see a lot of hungry players. You know, they went to recruit, they got like 3 or 4 freshmen. They're all hungry guys. Guys like, Devin McLaughlin and Jaden Zachary and Kanye Jones. All of these guys have had good high school careers, but were all under-recruited, which is kind of what you want at Boston College, these kids that have a chip on their shoulder, that are developmental projects. So that's good. But what worries me about this Boston College basketball team is the loss of so much scoring. They lost Jay Heath to Arizona State, CJ Felder to Florida, Rich Kelly to UMass, and Steph Mitchell went into the NBA draft. He ended up, I think, with the Utah Jazz for their summer team. But that's a lot to give up. You know, as poorly as BC played last year, they were 4-16. They were not a good team. But to lose that much talent, CJ Felder was a guy going in the right direction. I thought Jay Heath had his moments too. But that's going to be a lot for Earl Grant to make up. And the guys that he brought in, I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to compete at the level that they did last year. Even though that they lost 16 games, they were in some of them. They don't have the score. I don't know who's going to be the go-to scorer on this team. Is it going to be DeMar Langford? He didn't seem like last year like he's that kind of player. Mekhi Ashton Langford is more of a slash and scorer. So who's going to pick that up? Could it be Brevin Galloway, the transfer from College of Charlestown, who knew Earl Grant before he transferred over to BC? Big question with him. He's a guard. He had knee surgery. What's he going to look like? He's already said that it was kind of rusty, but he feels 100% now. That's good, but with the wear and tear of a season, sometimes those things can change. So Galloway could be someone to watch for. I like one name that I like that I've heard of that could be you really develop if Grant does a nice job with him is TJ Bickerstaff, who is from Drexel. He averaged 11 points a game last year. He brought Drexel to the NCAA tournament where they lost to Illinois in the first round. He's 6'9", bigger kid. Maybe with some good good talent around him, maybe he'll grow. So it's going to be a challenging year. So I'm not going to be the first person here to say that Boston College is going to turn it around in year one. What we should look for, what's a realistic goal for Boston College is some big things. They need to improve on defense first and foremost. Their defense was abysmal last year. And so, yes, on one hand, it stinks to see CJ Felder and Jay Heath and all these other guys leave. But remember, these are also the guys that couldn't play defense either. So it stinks that they're leaving because you're going to lose their scoring, but they couldn't stop anything. So it's different. You're losing guys, but you're bringing in guys in your system that can play defense, because that is what Earl Grant is pushing for. And I think that defense could get Boston College into some games. If BC mucks up some games against some of these teams, they could be a fun team. I don't know if the games will be fun because they're going to make it mucky, but they could be an interesting team to watch. So I'm interested to see how their defense plays. And I'm interested with how these new complementary pieces fit in. Who's going to be the starting lineup at this point? I'm imagining it's going to be the Langford brothers at guard, Fred Scott probably as one forward, along with James Karnick at forward, I guess, and maybe Quentin Post or James Vanderbaan at center. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they're going to line that up. They're going to have to figure some things out, because they could also put Bickerstaff in the starting lineup, move Karnick over to the 5. I mean, there's a million different configurations. So we're going to have to wait tonight's game against Dartmouth. This is a big game for Boston College. Dartmouth didn't play at all last year. The Ivy League sat out all last season because of COVID. They did not want to play. So Boston College is a 13-point favorite. They should win this game easily. If they struggle, that's going to give you a good feeling. I mean, they're going to struggle at different times during the season, but against a team like Dartmouth, they really shouldn't. They play Fairfield later. That should be a game where they may struggle a little bit more. So the game is on ACC Network Extra. I encourage you to check it out. See where Boston College basketball is heading this year. I know there's a lot of excitement within the program. We'll have to see where they're going, but you want to see where they're kind of progressing to, because next year's recruiting class is awesome. They've got 2 4-stars. They've got some really exciting players coming in. So they just need to start to develop and build a little bit to get those guys in. And then you're going to see what Earl Grant can do. Now, in a moment, we're going to have Mitch Wolfe on our show to talk about not BC football, all the NCAA games in college football from the last week. And he's going to have some picks that you may like. But you know what picks I like? PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a leader in college football fantasy daily fantasy, and it's easy to use. PrizePicks makes more props than anyone in the world and offers all the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you may now have heard of. I went on PrizePick on Saturday to pick some college football plays, and there were so many different options. Anything you can think of on PrizePicks. Basically, you put it in, boom, you can find it. And if you're like, I want to do college football and I want to do the NBA, you can do that too. You can mix and match and make whatever kind of bet you want. PrizePicks walks you through it. It's super easy to use. Just pick 2 to 5 players, the over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Use the award-winning app on both the Apple App Store and Google Play, and they're going to match. If you put up to $100, they're going to give you a 100% deposit match. Just make sure to use promo code LOCKEDON. PrizePick is safe and easy to use, and they offer fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We're talking with Mitch Wolfe about the weekend in college football that was. Now, Mitch joins us on Monday to talk about BC football, but we always love to have Mitch back on to talk about all the other games that happened. Mitch, how's it going?
It wasn't my best week as a gambler, so that's kind of disappointing, but otherwise a very fun and pretty chaotic week of college football.
So obviously, if we're going to talk about the ACC, the biggest game of the weekend was not Boston College and Virginia Tech. It was UNC stunning Wake Forest in a game with, again, no defense. A win for the Tar Heels, 58-55, and dropping Wake Forest. They don't actually lose an ACC game, but it basically removes ACC's hope of getting into the college football playoffs. Mitch, what did you think about this game?
I mean, this game was it's like I predicted. It was going to be a ton of fun, tons of scoring, tons of big plays. You had Sam Howell going off, Ty Chandler going off for UNC, and obviously Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry had big games for Wake. Just a really fun game from top to bottom. Wake kind of let it get away from them in the fourth quarter because, their defense just really struggled to finish the game and tackle. So, and that was the book on Wake Forest. They could score with anybody, but, they was really struggling on defense. So that finally caught up to them. And, I think they've still got a good chance to finish with one loss. They have BC the final week of the season, so that'll be interesting, but I think they're still probably the favorite to win the Atlantic. So we'll see how that goes in the final few weeks.
I saw one of my old blogging friends, Cam Lemons, who writes for Blogger So Dear about Wake Forest. And he was standing on a mountain trying to claim that it wasn't the defense's fault. It was the offense. I don't know, man. I look at Wake Forest scoring 24 points in the second half and go, how can that? I mean, they probably could have scored more, but you scored enough points to win a game there. That can't be all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the list of games that you lose where you score 55 is probably pretty short. So, letting up, and the amount of games where you let up 58 points is probably quite long. So, I don't think it's any, it's not a crazy take to say. I mean, maybe I would imagine maybe he's doing a bit where it's like, no, guys, I promise it's the Leslie Nielsen gift from one of the Naked Gun movies where the building is exploding. He's like, everybody stay calm.
All right, let's move along. Pitt, their offense took care of business as they smothered Duke. Any last thoughts about this game? I mean, this is a quick and easy one. Duke is toast.
This one actually had a bit of controversy because Pat Narduzzi claimed in his post-game press conference that one of Duke's offensive tackles, who he was a grad transfer from Pitt, was calling out some of Pitt's defensive signals early in the game, which is kind of how Duke was able to they scored 12 points in the first quarter. Their offense actually got some things going. So that was a bit of an interesting thing from Narduzzi to allege that kind of behavior on a former player. So that's something to, look into, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, Pitt, they're still in control in this Coastal, and the big game though, I think is going to be watching what Miami does, because I was saying on Locked On ACC, Miami has a pretty easy schedule to get in to win the Coastal Conference if they continue to play well. They have Virginia Tech and they have Duke and Florida State. But they snuck by Georgia Tech on Saturday, 33-30, in a game that is a preview kind of what we're going to see against BC this week.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything that could go wrong for Georgia Tech this season has gone wrong, at least on the field. They had a nice win against UNC early in the year. That seems like it was years ago now. I mean, they're just plummeting back to earth. Like I did predict this to be a high scoring game, and it was, so that's good. And Georgia Tech did cover, but yeah, Georgia Tech will present some unique problems for BC's defense, given that they have a very mobile quarterback and some decent offensive weapons, but that defense isn't playing super well. And yeah, I don't really know what to make of Georgia Tech right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough game for them. BC opens as a 2-point favorite on the road. I think it's their first time against an ACC opponent this year that they're favorited. That's what happens when you get Phil Jurkovec back, because I believe, if I read online, when they faced the Hokies, they were a 3-point underdog going into that. And then when Jurkovec was announced as quarterback, I think it went right over to pick them.
It did. Yeah. So I had it. I think it was originally at 3. It was down to 2.5 for a little bit. And then as soon as they announced Jurkovec, it went down to even. And then some had it down at 1. So, but yeah, I mean, Jurkovec being worth about 2 or 3 points, that seems about fair.
Yep. All right. So North Carolina State, they took care of business against Florida State. I watched like 10 seconds of this game, got bored, and shut it off.
Yeah. I mean, no weird scoring, just straight up UNC scores a touchdown, or NC State scores a touchdown once every quarter. Florida State makes it a little interesting in the third, but obviously the Noles can't much going. It's kind of interesting about Florida State because obviously they're struggling this year, but they're relatively in these games. I'm not saying Mike Norvell is it completely turned around, but they definitely seem to be going more in the right direction than they have been in at least the last few seasons before this.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing a poor job at all. I think he's got and once he gets his recruits in here and starts to get they've got some big level guys. I know they have one of the top 10 recruits in the country coming next year. This team I think is going to be in good shape.
Yeah, they've got a lot of they brought in a lot of transfers this year, like the Jermaine Johnson, the transfer from Georgia, who Georgia defense is obviously elite right now, and he just couldn't get playing time, and he comes to Florida State and he's lighting the world on fire. So, I think Norvell's using the transfer portal well to get some talent infusions. And like you said, once he gets those full cycles of recruiting in, he might finally be able to get the Seminoles turned around.
And then finally, the last ACC game of the week was Clemson beating Louisville, and Clemson is they're playing with explosives because, man, Louisville had this game at the end and couldn't get the ball into the end zone. Kind of reminds me of what happened with BC, but a little bit different. But another game, end of a game where Brent Venables' defense kind of holds on to win a game for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just gonna be how Clemson plays this year against everybody. Like their defense is gonna play pretty well for most of the game. I mean, this was one of their best offensive performances of the season so far, which is pretty sad.
Yep.
But DJ Uiagalelei had a pretty decent game, which good for him to kind of get things turned around. Malik Cunningham was still great on the ground. People were kind of praising his passing early in the season, but in the last 2 weeks, it seems like it's just kind of been him creating with his legs, which is, very fair. He's turned into, an elite runner from at the quarterback position. But yeah, Louisville just couldn't get it done at the end. They had, one of the situations similar to Cincinnati or Tulsa against Cincinnati, where they had the ball, down late, chance to score and even go up. But, play calling, I didn't love the play call on fourth to just roll him out that way and not really give him many options. So couldn't get the win against Clemson there.
So now we're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. I love BetOnline. It's so easy to use. Earlier this season, I made a bet for NC State at 6.5 wins. I already cashed in on that. You can make your bets too, especially with college basketball right around the corner. You can head over to BetOnline and find all your futures and all your game wages that you want to make. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 21 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Remember, use that promo code LOCKEDON to get your 50% welcome bonus at BetOnline, where the game starts. The ACC, and there was also some big games in the top 25. We'll just go over quickly. The one that stuck out to me that I watched was Purdue taking down Michigan State. Now, this is the second top 5 win they have. They took out Iowa earlier a couple of weeks ago. And what interests me mostly about Purdue is this team is a team that is, like, on paper cannot beat anybody that is in the middle of the road. They have losses against Minnesota, Notre Dame, and they have now beaten 2 top 5 teams, and they have Ohio State this week. So they have the possibility of winning 3 top 5 games if they can pull it off. Mitch, did you get a chance to check out anything about this game?
I did. I had this one on because I was really wrong on this game. I thought Michigan State would win. I thought the under would hit, and it was just points, and most of them from Purdue just throwing the ball all over the yard. I'll actually be at the Purdue-Ohio State game this week as I live in Columbus, so I'll be seeing that one live, which will be interesting. I think Ohio State will win this one because I just think, the book is kind of out of Purdue. Like, nobody's going to overlook them now. They've beaten 2 top 5 teams, so, you got to prepare properly. So I think that, Purdue's kind of shot their shot, and they've been successful, but, I think the third time will not be the charm for them this time.
We'll have to see. And then going from the top 25 to the basement, UMass, Walt Bell is out after 3 seasons and 2 wins, which is crazy to think about. But you also have to consider they played 4 games last year. So, I mean, he wasn't getting it done, and losing to URI this week definitely will not get it done, and he's out. I have to wonder if his comments about, if you hadn't listened, Walt Bell is the head coach was the head coach of UMass, made some comments that were pretty pointed at UMass's athletic department a couple weeks ago, talking about realignment and why UMass wasn't invited, basically saying, we don't have any of the facilities. We don't put the money into it. So why would they invite us? And he's gone 2 weeks later. So I got a feeling that that made the athletic department's job a little easier, but what are your thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, don't bite the hand that feeds you, obviously. But his comments are fair.
Right. Absolutely.
Not have great facilities. That stadium is arguably the worst in college football. They're not a conference. There's not really much to play for. Recruiting there is tough. I think I read in The Athletic where they kind of were previewing some possible candidates for the job that many consider this to be the worst job in the FBS. And even they were like, listen, like, they can't really go down to FCS because it's big loss of revenue as well. So you kind of just got to tough it out and, figure something out to do moving forward.
Yeah, they need to hit lightning in a bottle. And I sent Mitch a note. So the names that have been popping around: Don Brown, Boston College's former defensive coordinator. He was the head coach of UMass when they had their successful national championship as a FCS school. So Arizona. He's the defensive coordinator at Arizona. He's making, I think, about $800,000, which is about what they paid Walt Bell, if I remember correctly. So they might be able to afford him, and maybe he just wants to get the heck out of Tucson because Arizona's not a very good school.
Now they just got their first win in over a year, so things are tracking. And if I'm an old guy like Don Brown, granted he's a New England guy, so maybe he feels differently. But if you want your last stop of your career, down in Arizona where it's some nice weather and some good golfing, I don't think he would turn that down to come back to good old Amherst, Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other names that you've seen is the head coach of Holy Cross, which I think Mitch and I were saying probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if he's gonna, if he'll work. I mean, he's a gamble on himself. But I was the SB Nation site Underdog Dynasty listed Tem Lokabu as a possible option. I don't want to keep saying this because every time they mention a BC coordinator linked with like UMass or UConn that they wouldn't take it. But I don't have the statistics in front of me of how much he makes, but I don't think it's probably that far off of what the head coach makes at UMass. So would he take it's honestly a step down, and it's not career suicide, but it's a humongous risk for a young coach like Tem to take a step like that.
Absolutely. I mean, Lukabu's career right now is trending in a very good direction. The defense was decent last year, had some moments, and then this year they're playing super well statistically. I just published my article looking at BC from a statistical standpoint, and they're one of the best defenses in the nation, looking at the numbers. And I still think he needs another year or two of similar play from a defense, and then maybe he gets poached by a bigger Power 5 program to be their defensive coordinator. So I don't really see him going to UMass. He doesn't have a ton of connection there. And like you said, it's really is just career suicide for you can kind of figure it out maybe a few years down the road, but you just go there, you just waste a few years of your career. That's all you gain by going there, really.
I mean, and I think my thought is if UMass is going to poach somebody from a Power 5 school, it's going to be like a positional coach. Like you mentioned, it's the wide receiver coach for Pitt, like something like
Marion.
that. Yeah, something like that that has that kind of experience. They're not going to get a coordinator because honestly, I believe from what I've read, BC's coordinators are getting paid more. So that was my thoughts on that. Now heading on over to our old friend Addazio over at Colorado State, because we always love talking about Steve Addazio here on Locked On Boston College, and they lost to Wyoming. And of course, he gives another great quote after the game, and I'm going to play it right here.
If you think I'm going to forget that, you don't know me very well. I'll never forget that. Ever.
That's Steve Addazio with his quote of the game. And Mitch, sounds like everything we've ever heard after a Boston College game. Am I right?
I mean, so when I saw this, I didn't like click it at first. I just kind of watched it without the sound on Twitter. And I thought he was like threatening to fight a media member saying like, do you want to take this outside or something? Cause I mean, I say that as a joke, but I could tell you that and be like, oh yeah, that sounds like something Steve Addazio would do. So yeah, I don't think that he's going to be long for this job. Looking at the rest of their schedule, I feel like they're going to finish about 4-8. There's not a ton of momentum with that program. He's blown some big game. He's blown some games that he could have won, obviously against Boise State in that one. I think it was Boise State. And then going against Vanderbilt. So, he's had opportunities to kind of get this program turned around, and I just don't think it's going well. He's obviously getting testy with the media there. So, I think they might be looking for a new coach relatively soon.
We spend about 30 seconds to 45 seconds on Steve Addazio every week. My Friday co-host, Eric Hofstas, every time Addazio plays, has about 5 tweets or 6 tweets about him. You have to check him out. So make sure you follow Eric. He was talking to someone who was following Colorado State, I think a media member, and was floored with Addazio's play call in the goal line situations and going, why the hell is he calling the plays like he does? So if you want more context on what Addazio is doing, check that out. Mitch, was there any other games that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, like I said, it was a pretty crazy week. It just mainly because of the Purdue thing. A lot of undefeated or a lot of teams that were ranked lost to unranked teams. You had Bama struggling with LSU, Oregon with weird game against Washington, Ohio State weird game against Nebraska. Cincinnati is still kind of struggling to close teams out. So, I think my this is just gonna be a really interesting week for the college football playoff committee. There's been some griping about Cincinnati not being ranked high enough, especially with their upcoming opponents not being ranked. But, people are like, oh, like you're holding Cincinnati to a different standard. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to do that because, they are playing lesser opponents and I get it. Ohio State isn't defeating Nebraska. And, Nebraska their record is bad, but they've been playing pretty well in every game. So, I think we do need to be a little fair to these teams that, you do struggle with these games, but I'm not super sold on Cincinnati, given that they're not, dominating these teams in the way that a team that wants to be ranked in the top 4 should be. Right. With that being said, the gap between Georgia and everybody else is a chasm that is miles wide. So, ultimately, I don't think it matters because Georgia is just so far and ahead the best team in this country this year.
I had to say I watched a little bit of the Georgia-Missouri game just because I wanted to see how that Missouri team that put up 40 or 30 something points against BC looked against Georgia. Connor Bazelak didn't play because he was hurt.
Yeah, I think they trotted out 2 true freshmen at quarterback. So I'm sure that was a fun day for them.
Yeah, they got murdered by Georgia's defense.
That's like the stories you think about when you think about kids who played Derrick Henry in high school. But it's like, imagine you're a quarterback in Missouri and you're a freshman. You're like, all right, you got to go out and play against Georgia, and then you have an Econ 101 final coming up the next week, and you just come back to your freshman dorm in Missouri after just getting the piss beaten out of you by Jordan Davis and those guys, and you're like, I don't know what my life is right now.
Right. And then you have Stetson Bennett, who is basically the Dennis Grosel of Georgia football, throwing dimes all over the place. I don't know where this guy came from. My BetOnline bet of JT Daniels looks awful because he doesn't even look like
I mean, I think they're basically just keeping JT Daniels in as like a relief pitcher in case Bennett really just starts to go off the deep end. And if that's your, kind of relief pitcher, that's one of the best relief pitchers you can have. And I mean, the funny thing about Stetson Bennett is he's not even the most ridiculous player on this team. They have a wide receiver who's their main wide receiver. His name is Ladd McConkey, who is, I think he's a true freshman walk-on who's, this little, kind of Patriots slot receiver-esque dude. And, he's their leading receiver among 4 and 5 stars. So, that's just another crazy wrinkle to Georgia this year.
And they get Tennessee this week, which should be a good game. This should be a good game. Tennessee's an SEC team heading in the right direction. We didn't get a chance to talk about the Florida Gators, another team heading in the wrong direction.
Oof, yeah.
But Mitch, where can people find you on social media? We got to wrap this up.
Yep. You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. Just posted my article with the BC by the numbers, looking at some of BC's statistics this year. And, we're hopefully the proper YouTube channels will be posting a decent broadcast copy of the game where I can kind of dive into some film analysis of Phil Dracovic and the BC offense.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Mitch. And this is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJ_BC. On tomorrow's show, we're going to review Boston College basketball's first game. They open their season tonight against Dartmouth. We'll have all the full details about what happened in that game and all the blow-by-blows. Plus, we'll start diving into Georgia Tech. So it's a packed episode of Locked On BC. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and hit us up on YouTube. You hit that subscribe button, you'll make me a happy man. Thank you all and see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.